What's going on, everybody? Today we've got a special guest, Samia, who runs all things digital and marketing here at Bags. She's also an incredible founder herself. So she both understands what we do and talking about our businesses, but also has like lived in the seat of a founder and currently is living in the seat of a founder. So, Samia, I'm excited to have you on. I think actually in this episode, I'm going to probably pass the mic to you to do a little bit more of the
Amazing.
emceeing, and we can take it from there.
Hi, everyone. Me and DT we kicked everyone out and we're just gonna have a one-on-one conversation. But yeah, so I just wanted to kind of guest moderate this episode because we want to talk about a little bit more about the entrepreneurship is hard topic because we filmed that episode and I swear we could have went on for like 6 more hours. So we kind of just were like, whoa, but there's a lot to talk about and unpack here. Um, so today we're going to talk about kind of work-life balance, a little bit more about what DT does, because I don't know how he has the same 24 hours as everyone else in a day, but he does. So I just want to pick his brain, and I feel like it'll be helpful for any founders listening as well. So yes, hello DT.
What up?
Thank you for sitting down with us today. Um, just for anyone who's listening for the first time to the podcast, like a really quick overview of like your career, because it's actually very interesting. DT played soccer. He went to an Ivy League. He started a lot of companies that I don't know if you're allowed to say all of them, but you've done a lot and you're only like, what, 30 something? So,
Yeah.
I mean, hey, just take it away. Tell us what you've done and how you have all that energy.
For sure, for sure. I don't know if I necessarily have all the energy to sustain it all, but I think part of the job as a founder is to like make it work, and sort of figure it out on the go. But yeah, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Bags. I've had a kind of a strange but fun journey becoming a founder. I went to Brown, where I met Ignacio, my co-founder, and I went to high school with our other co-founder, Lloyd. Following Brown, during college, I tried to start a bunch of different businesses. I had an event company with Ignacio, and then I was like on the classic like finance path. Both my parents started finance, and that's kind of what I thought I wanted to do. I was going to go work at a big bank after school. Then I kind of took a turn and decided to play soccer professionally. I was a college soccer player for a year, really with the motivation of like trying to live kind of, fulfill my full potential as a player, but also see what it was like to live a little bit of a different life as a soccer player in Europe. So I played soccer in Sweden and Greece. I ended up starting two companies while I was playing. I think soccer was a lot of fun, but eventually kind of got really bored. I watched every Netflix episode and played video games, went to the beach every day, and then was like, felt like my mind was kind of melting. And so I kind of sunk my extra time, which was 12 to 8 p.m. every day when I was done with practice into trying to start businesses. I started two companies. The one was called Ask Tipster. We built tools to help brand acquire customers. That's not what we started as. We pivoted a bunch of times. And then the other business was a soccer agency called Only Four Stars. That business was around for the last 8 9 years. And, when I was deciding what to do post soccer, kind of got to the point where I said, all right, like not going to go return to banking, the banking world. Like, let me just sort of dive into this startup thing. And to be honest, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I think I definitely had sort of the element of blind confidence. We talked about it before in this podcast, and just really dove in and figured out a lot of it on the fly. And at that time I was, 23 years old, a year out of college. We'd raised a little bit of money and I kind of just dove all in. And now I'm 31 turning 32. Between then and now, I ended up selling Ask Tipster. My team, the soccer business, has taken on a bunch of forms. I tried to start a blockchain, NFT, crypto startup somewhere in between, shut that business down, lost a bunch of money, fired a bunch of people, which was really tough. And then started Bags in 2020. I'm trying to kind of build something that combines both impact and profit. I'm trying to build a better way for business to fund their growth, and build a better relationship between how they manage their money and how to find money. So that's kind of been my journey. There's a lot of ups, a lot of downs. I've definitely got the scars to prove it. So yeah.
Cool. Well, I heard you talk about pivoting, and I feel like that's
Mm.
kind of like DT mentioned. I have a fashion brand, and that's what I did in
Plug the fashion
school.
brand.
And
Shameless
I
plug.
know I'm so, you guys, I'm like chronically like shy, but Samia Osmani is the name. And, I actually was thinking about this yesterday to myself that when do you know when to pivot? I feel like there's two types of people, right? There's like one who's like my dad and like you, where you just want to start something and like do really well at it. And then there's
Yeah.
the other type of founder where I think they're extremely devoted to one thing and they don't want to ever pivot or let go. And I feel like
Yeah.
I'm that person sometimes. So I don't know if that's an accurate representation, but you know, how did you know when you were like, this is just not working and I need to try something else and kind of keep moving forward in order for me to get what I ultimately need to get?
For sure. I think that comes back to like different elements. I'd say motivation, right? Like the first company I started, I was motivated by starting a business, but I didn't give a shit about the industry that we were in. The soccer business, I was kind of a in between of both. I love the industry and kind of like the business. Even though it's a tough business. And then bags has been, through a lot of pivots, but I think we always had a North Star. Like we knew exactly what we wanted to accomplish in the business. We had a goal, we had a mission, we had a problem. And so I think part of it is like understanding why you're doing things, right? Like why for you are so drawn to your craft and the passion around, fashion and creation, right? And like, I know in the last episode we talked about negotiables and non-negotiables, but there are certain things that you need to be able to do in order to feel fulfilled. And like, it seems like anything that you do. And I think that's the same thing with all founders when figuring out, when to pivot, when to not versus staying stuck in a lane. I think you can still pivot and adjust within a certain lane, while still maintaining the things that make you tick. And so for, to take an example for you, but also like from my experience, in the first business, we pivoted because we needed to figure out how we could build a business, period. We would build sort of any business in the space that would work. In bags now, like we're not that interested in building things, right? Like there's certain types of businesses, even within bags that like we discovered as pay points that like we could go try to solve, but like that's not why we got into this business, right? Like we could have pivoted bags to be lending underwriting software for lenders.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't really give a shit. Like, I care about lenders, but like, I give a shit about working with businesses. Like, that's who I'm in it for. So like, that's a non-negotiable. So I'm only going to pivot in the direction of solving the business's problem and working with businesses as their customers. So yeah, the core answer of when to know to pivot is actually, it should be driven by data. It should be driven by when you have customers. It should be driven by whether it fits your goals and motivation. And then I would also understand like what type of business and what's the outcome that you really care about. Because if for you, the outcome is just like, I want to build things. I want to put together a fashion line and a label that like is pure creation and resonates with a certain subset of my customer base and gives me some extra money in my pocket. And like one day I can hopefully do it full time and like be that creator I always wanted to be. Like that's a W, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you were like, hey, I want to build a $500 million a year, $1 billion brand out of this, like, because of the monetary motivation, there's a whole lot of bunch of little pivots that you could have made,
Mm-hmm.
like that would be more monetarily focused, right? That might get you closer to that. But like in reality, like, is that the goal? Maybe not. And that's okay, right? Like, and so I don't know. I think it's understanding yourself, is understanding where there's opportunity, is understanding what your customers want. It's also understanding what you actually want to build.
Wow, this is like turning into a mini therapy session for me. No, that is amazing advice. Like I feel like no, what you said really holds true and it kind of goes back to a previous conversation we had about mission-driven companies and how it's like find what you really are passionate about and like don't sway from it because I think a lot of people, which is fine, I think they go into it and they're like this is what I'm doing and then they kind of backtrack once they realize like
Yeah.
XYZ is popular now, like oh,
Yeah.
people are paying attention to the environment. Let me try to do that now. You know what I mean? So I think it's kind of cool when a company has their like heart and soul and then they stuck to it and then like seeing that pay off is just like, I can't even imagine how gratifying that might feel. But so thank you for that. And yes, I don't want to build the next czar or anything. So just to clarify,
And by the way, not to say that you couldn't, right? Absolutely, one. And then two, I also listen, especially on the businesses that are more creative driven, right? Like I think some of the best creators ever worked at it to build a business, right? Think about like Virgil and what he built, right? Like think about like Alexander McQueen, and like there was just a pure passion for the craft that drove him towards building essentially a business and an empire. Like you don't have to kind of skate where the puck is in order to build some cool shit.
right. Oh, I feel like whenever DT has a habit of turning the conversation, let's talk about you again. We've talked about it a little bit before. You're like a serial entrepreneur, but what has it been like? Like, has it ever been isolating to be a founder? Has your family just from the get-go been like, yes, like you got this? Or was it like, no, we should probably put you in something a little bit more stable? Or, and then what about your friends? Do they like understand what you're doing? Or do you sometimes feel like you're just kind of like on an island by yourself and can't really talk to anyone about it? Like, talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think when I first started Tipster in 15, like the being a founder startup ecosystem was kicking into gear, but it wasn't what it is now, right? It's not as it wasn't as institutionalized. Like I didn't have a single other friend who startup founder at that point. Now, like a large percentage of my friends are some variation of a founder, and so like people were like, oh, like you're doing it, you're trying. And I remember I was kind of at the beginning, like when I would tell people about it, they would ask more questions and it would kind of stress me out. And like, I'd be worried about whether like they would see the vision or give me approval or get affirmation. And then like my family has always been incredibly supportive. But like to say they really understood, and my dad was an entrepreneur, so he gets the hustle. My mother, a different type of entrepreneur in her own right, but went down a more very successful corporate route, and finance route. And she was extremely supportive, but I would say didn't really get it probably until now, because now she's the founder and feels all the pains. And so yeah, I think part of any founder's journey is like kind of blazing down a path that either hasn't been explored or probably isn't understood by a lot of people in their ecosystem. And what I would say is I think one of the things that's comforting is like finding other people who are on this similar path, especially now and today, like surrounding yourself with other founders that you can have conversations with who get it, who get you and who understand is helpful. It allows you to sort of avoid mistakes. Two, I think from a family perspective, sometimes that might mean like disappointing an uncle or an aunt or a mother or a father or a sibling. But I think, I don't know, I found at least with my parents' support, like the biggest thing is like showing the level of work and hustle and commitment. And I think at least with the support I've had, it's like my parents just want to know that I'm working my ass off and really trying to do something with honestly and objectively the massive amount of privilege that I've been afforded. And so, but I will say it's like, I remember I sold my first company when I sold in 2019, and like I called my mom and she was like, great, does that mean you're gonna get health insurance now? And I was like, all right, like really? Like, come on, I'm 26, I just sold a business, it's awesome. Like, you're just thinking about what I'm gonna get health insurance. And at the end of the day, she's a mom. She's wonderful. And like, I completely get where she's coming from. But yeah, and the last thing I would add is like, I realized this after the tipster scale is that, I think it's very, very human for people to seek some form of validation, especially given the founder journey is kind of like this. And like when you do it, you're like, oh, okay, great. Like, be pumped for me. Like, and you expect this like incredible reaction with fireworks and da 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 da. And by expecting and hoping for that, and when you eventually get to that point, and if it doesn't meet your expectations, it kind of brings down like your self-accomplishment and achievement. And I think that was a good, important lesson for me to learn pretty early on, which is like, I think the more that you rely on someone else to give you that validation, like the more you're exposing yourself to disappointment. And think for me, like how I've been able to stay sort of centered in the work that I'm doing is, and I'm also a middle child, shout out middle children,
yes,
right? Like 100% is kind of doing things and accomplishing them for yourself and like appreciating yourself and like the small group of people, maybe it's your co-founders, et cetera, who might feel that same level of achievement, and like having that be enough. And then anything else that happens is kind of gravy.
Right.
So I just think like appreciating yourself and your own accomplishments has helped me like avoid disappointment from other people, because objectively, I don't really care.
Right. Absolutely. No, that reminds me of like, if I texted on the family group chat and said, I got a promotion, it'd be like, good. But then if you're like, oh, I just, got, like, I just finished a collection. Oh, cool. Like, you know what I mean? Oh, it's
They had
always a
no
little,
idea. Yeah.
yeah, it's always a little different. And my mom is more, traditional. My dad, moved here when he was 19 from Pakistan, did the whole American dream, like rags to riches thing. So it is really nice actually having family support it is
Course.
important and it's
Of
validating.
course.
But 100% echo everything you say about, you know, doing it for yourself, honestly. Like that's why we're doing it. And for something that's, the point is that no one understands it. That's why you're doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're gonna pivot a little tiny bit
Okay.
to let's talk about work-life balance.
Mm.
And like I mentioned earlier, you're my boss. I talk to you every day, and you are really, really good at balancing like traveling and spending time with family and loved ones, and working out, prioritizing yourself, and also getting your shit done. So, it is different for founders than it is for someone working a 9 to 5, work-life
For sure.
balance is different the way it looks for you versus someone else.
For
But
sure.
talk us through how you kind of got to that point. Has it always been like that? Have you always had those boundaries set up, or like was something you had to work on? But
Yeah.
yes, tell us.
So going back to, I've always been good, and the answer is my work-life balance has not always been balanced. And and I think that also stemmed from, in the early days, attaching so much of my self-worth to my business and the like hustle, grind, founder mentality. And to be clear, it's not that grinding and hustling is a bad thing, right? Like innately, we kind of all need to be able and willing to roll up our sleeves at any given point to get things done. But I've found through multiple lessons that like any deadline you set, like they're important, but sometimes they don't get hit. And that's okay, right? Most deadlines are set by the individual and not our actual real. So give yourself a little bit of flexibility there. And then two, I found like there's an element of productivity that only happens when you have the right alignment of one, like a space for focus that isn't the same place where you hopefully sleep or eat or hang out with your friends, right? So having a separate place of work, physical activity, and then some sort of mental or social simulation that is separate from your work. And so when I think about my productivity, I like getting and focusing on work at a place after getting a good sleep and getting like a solid 6 hours or 8 hours or 10 hours of work in, and then giving yourself that space for the other things you enjoy in life, like is how you get like the optimal output. And that's also like partly about how like, culturally how we think about building teams of bags. Like we want people to have the right balance, because I don't think the, 18-hour work day is how you actually get the best results, especially in the current world. So yeah, I think it took a little while to learn, but I think we managed to find that balance. And then the last thing I would say is like, I'm definitely that founder who's like, yeah, I'm going to sleep at 10 and I'm waking up at 6. And to the point of actually getting my work done, that sort of 6:30 to 9 period, or 6:30 to 10, is my window to really get things done. Because the reality of being a founder is that like you are putting out fires, leaning in, supporting people all throughout the day. So finding space for your own output ends up being really difficult. I know a lot of founders who do it late at the night, but I like doing it in the morning because it gives me a space to be quiet, do my thing, then get to the rest of the day to work with my team. And then come 6 or 7, like I get the excess time and space to do the other things that are relevant in my life, whether that's
Right.
kind of sort of connect out with my partner or see friends or see family. Um, so yeah, it's a little bit of discipline and shifting of the schedule, but I don't know. I I'm not saying hustle culture should die. I do think culture is an important element of it, but I just think it's a matter of understanding the things that give you the best productivity.
That's true. Because it does bleed in. Like
Yeah,
when you do take care of yourself and actually like interact with other human beings and laugh and watch a movie or like, you know
for
what I
sure.
mean? It will bring you back to like your work and your craft and like wanting to do better. But exactly, it's like if you burn yourself out, like we're all only human. So
Yep.
thinking that you can just grind yourself to the ground, it's like probably not gonna achieve that much anyways in the long run.
Yep.
So yeah, very good point. No, I've always admired that. I think it's cool because, you know, you see a lot of founders or you even see people working their regular jobs and they're just like, they don't really make space for that. And I think ultimately it is really important.
One
So,
thing that I would actually add to that, though, and this is what I
yes.
think it partly the change too, is I think the early days of being a founder, you are um, a player on the field, right? You
Mhm.
don't have a team. Your job is to both be the player and the coach and the owner, all the things. Then when you start to bring on teammates, you're a player coach, right? So you have to both be a player on the field and coach your teammates, right? And then eventually, as your team starts to grow, and I think we're starting to approach that point, like your job ends up being coach, where in order for the business to grow, you can't physically do the work yourself, right? So, I think now it's recognizing when to transition as a founder, but now that we are starting to grow a bit, like my job is to be a coach, my job is to unblock my team, my job is to put the best lineup possible out in the field so that we can win, right? And I think by thinking about it in those segments and then aligning that with your own elements of productivity, that's how you can get to like like peak output and you manage it all.
Yeah.
Because like I can't do all the work. The work only happens if I appropriately delegate and coach and support. Right.
Right. Oh, that's a good point. I was actually going to ask you about wearing multiple hats and what that's like. And, you know, when you're starting out, you're like social media, you're the product development, you're the finance guy, all this, that. So like pushing past that point and then like knowing you're ready for the next level
Yeah.
to expand your team, like how do you kind of know that? I know it's obviously money driven.
It's stay lean as much as possible, right? Especially if you are still figuring out what your business model is, still figuring out who your target customer is, still figuring out and doing some of the early pivots to get through some stuff, right? And then once you get to the point where you've like sold something to a group of people that solved the pain point a couple of times, and you're like, wait, I think I have something that is potentially repeatable on a business that I can build here. I like that the entire business. Until you get to the point where you have the business in the box, meaning like, this is how much it costs to make the product, where to get it, to sell it, how to do it again, how to drive a profit, how to manage customer acquisition, like all the things that go into a business. Once you've gotten to the point that you have the business in a box, then you start to bring in individuals to fill each of those roles, given the addition of each of those individuals will drive more business
Mhm.
and make the business more money, right? Because the money and the revenue is what should be reinvested into getting more teammates, growing the business, and taking those steps forward. And so, yeah, I typically say, hey, stay lean until you've really figured out a repeatable business that you can start to grow and you know how to grow it. And then once you figure that out, hire people into the roles that, that can drive more growth for you and for you.
Right.
Um, And then the last thing I would say, especially in the early days of things you don't know, first of all, like a lot of this stuff's been figured out already. And
Hmm.
there's so much information online. Like I think some of like the best founders I know are really, really fast learners, and learn by doing. Like go on YouTube. Like it's kind of simple. Shout out
Right.
YouTube. Shout out Google. Bags backed by Google. We're
Yes.
backed by Google as
We
well.
had to plug. We actually haven't plugged bags yet. So,
Google Black Latino Founders Fund recipient right here. Shout out Google. Shout out YouTube. Y'all are dope.
yes.
But go on YouTube, learn some stuff, learn fast, and then where you need expertise, you have points to like bring people in as contractors, not employees first,
Yeah.
right? You got equity to give, use it. Be cognizant of the value of it. And then like be weary of setting people up for salary because that shit's real. And when you do, like you're responsible to make sure they get paid.
Right. He's responsible that I get paid. No, I'm kidding.
Big fat.
He's directly, he's
See,
adding, he's subtweeting me right now. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's so real.
I'm just kidding. No,
yeah.
I want to ask you one more question before we wrap. This has been, I'm not going to get on a soapbox, but this has been really, really great. And I hopefully anyone who's listening, I hope.
Hey, shameless plug. You have the CashPod. It's valuable. It's good to do. That's how we grow. We appreciate you.
Yes. Thank you for listening. The last thing I want to ask you is what's something no one told you before starting a business that you had to learn the hard way? And try to make it a little obscure. Something a little like shock us a little bit. Give us the tea.
Damn, you trying to raise the bar. Something no one told me that I wish they did. Prioritize paying yourself. I mean, that might not be a shocker. It might not be that controversial, but especially when you get put in a position of like being a founder and leader and like investing back into the business and the businesses grow. In order to build a business that you could sustain, it's about sustaining yourself as well. And people are like, and of course, listen, you got to take salary cuts and things like that, but like, you got to pay your damn self and do it early, right? Like at the end of the day, like most likely you're the most likely person to be able to drive the businesses forward in an incremental way. And you should be getting paid for it. And so figuring out how much this business is making in order for you to be able to pay yourself a salary, however big or however small that might be, is a real point of leverage, and it's a real point of growth. And it'll make being a founder easier. I didn't pay myself in my first startup for the first 18 months. I blew through every dollar of every savings I ever had from the venture's past. And that was the wrong decision. And we were being advised by board members and investors that like this is the thing to do. And that's bullshit. Right? You should pay yourself, and your investors and advisors should want you to pay yourself so that you are just focused on running your business versus figuring out other ways. So pay yourself.
Love that. Take care of yourself. And then treat people well too. I will say, listen, the culture here at Bags, I don't know if we're hiring right now, but they take care of us.
We are hiring, right? We are absolutely hiring. We are absolutely hiring.
Another plug.
Okay.
No, that's great advice. I feel like that's not even talked about ever enough. Okay. Thank you for your time. I appreciate this conversation. Hopefully we do it again. This was very 100%. Helpful to me and hopefully other people. And we will see you next time on the CashPod. Oh, a shameless plug for Bags because we didn't do it yet. Basically, we're a financing platform and we get you money and we get you loans and accounting and bookkeeping and all this stuff. So not the most eloquent plug, but check us out.
Check us out. You need money. You need a better way to manage your money. That's what we're here for. Thank you so much for listening.
Bye.